Hi, everyone. Welcome to this panel discussion on home care. Is it the future of healthcare? That's what we are going to discuss. And I think we have got an eminent panel of panelists here. So we have Mr. Rajiv Sikka, he is the Group CIO of the Medanta Hospitals. Then we have Dr. A. Thanga Prabhu. He is an acute care physician and the Chief Medical Information Officer of Apollo Groups. And as he wants to proclaim, he is a test pilot for health informatics. That's it. Then we have Mr. Tushar Zade. He's the Chief Information Officer and Chief Data Officer of Origin Services, Pharmaceutical Services Limited. And then we have Mr. Bharat Gera. He's the founder of, that's a big name, Human-Centric Health Ecosystem. And he is a consulting CIO of multiple organizations. So every day you open LinkedIn and you can get one more organization being added. So I think we have a pretty colorful panel here and we'll certainly have great discussions. And as those who have been with me earlier know, I hardly talk and I let you talk. So over to Mr. Rajiv to set the ball rolling.
Sure. Very good afternoon, everyone.
What is your just basic thing? I mean, introductory note on this. What is care at home? You think is it the future of healthcare? And then we'll discuss it details later.
Sure. I definitely think it is the future of the healthcare because nowhere on this, in this country and more so globally also now that we will be in a position to accommodate, the patients in the hospital. So, the way we can have them this care away from the hospital. I may not say care at home. I'll say care away from the hospital is the future of the healthcare in not just in India but worldwide.
Great. So, Mr. Tushar, what's your view?
Well, yeah, absolutely. So I agree with Rajiv here. First of all, I think thank you so much for having me here along with such eminent panel. Perhaps I take the liberty of being the youngest in the group. But yeah, absolutely. So I think from a future perspective, healthcare has seen a lot of changes over the past few years, especially past 20 odd months given the COVID time. Healthcare at home and even remote is the right definition because and most of us have gone through some episode of COVID or even some of our family members have gone through. So absolutely agree with Rajiv. Remote healthcare is the next future. Absolutely.
Okay, Thanga, your opening remarks.
Thank you, Professor Supten. There's no doubt. I mean, we have arrived. We are there. It's not future anymore. This is reality. We are in the digital world, and healthcare is, in spite of refusing to move with the rest of the industry, as in aviation, banking, finance, education. Everybody except healthcare is in digital. So kicking and screaming, COVID has dragged us into the digital health world. And in the digital health world, we do things differently. It's not about going paperless, but it's about working digitally, which is a whole different way of doing things. An analogy is we don't carry our wallets. It's almost 3 years now. I don't have a wallet. We use our mobile phones to make all our payments. Everybody from the fishmonger to the tender coconut seller. It's amusing to see. They give you an option of sir, Google Pay, Paytm, kuch bhi chalega sir. Aapke paas nahi hai kya? And some jokers come and they say, I don't know how to use Paytm. So I just look at him and say, when the fishmonger can use Paytm, what's the problem with you? Right? So yes, digital has arrived, and with the digital arriving, what we are seeing is instead of the patients chasing the doctor and the hospital, now the healthcare institution, the whole meaning of healthcare is changing very rapidly now. We are at a point where we are not going to be seeing too many sick people. We are now in a world where we are aiming to keep people healthy. So what in GE 20 years ago, we used to talk about predict and prevent, not diagnose and treat. I'm so happy that I'm actually practicing it now. In the organization that I have joined, Apollo Hospitals, we have a new business called Pro Health, where we are using some of the coolest technology in the world to actually profile, predict, and prevent chronic diseases in the population, in the Indian population, who by nature is the Asians are very, very prone to, diabetes, hypertension, and what we call as the lifestyle diseases. So healthcare has moved to the home. It's how are we positioned to face it as a care provider, as a care seeker, as a doctor, as a nurse, as a person taking care of elders at home, as a person taking care of psychiatric patients. There's a whole dimension, left for us to quickly sort out and solve, because this is the need of the hour.
Okay, now it's your turn, Bharat. So what's your stake?
Well, I'm going to take a little bit of a more conservative stance and say it is still the future. Care at home definitely is desirable. And of course, when it comes to preventive care or chronic care, it makes a lot of sense. But if we go to the extent of saying, we provide the hospital services at home, that's where things are not so much there yet. Because to provide what can be provided in a hospital at home sometimes requires, technologies which are still not available for home use. So there are certain things which are still in the future. There are things that are here and now. When we say care at home, we should be able to draw the line and say what is possible now and what will be much more possible in the future. The other thing I think is what everybody spoke about, that the COVID wave has changed things completely. But here's an interesting fact, that even a simple thing like a teleconsultation, during the time the COVID wave happens, the OPD stops and everybody's doing teleconsultation. The moment the COVID wave drops, again, the people are back to the OPDs and the doctors are seeing the patients in the hospitals. So what's going on here? That's not a technology problem, but that is a problem of mindsets, both on the patient side and the doctor's side, and certain economic mechanisms which are probably still biased towards providing care in an OPD setting. So, for somebody who's been a digital entrepreneur in the past, and 20 years back, Amazon looked as if it would be the future, and we believed it would be the future, and it has become the future. But remember, it took 20 years. So care at home may be still in the horizon, but not here and now, is what I would say.
Well, it's nice to get divergent views in the opening round, and I think that makes it very interesting. So over to you, Mr. Rajiv, to take on further.
Sure. So, I think Bharat took a very right example of telemedicines. And Medanta, like any other hospital, also witnessed a peak of COVID. And during COVID, our telemedicine consult went 12 times the normal pre-COVID, consults. But do they came back to, pre-COVID? No. So we are still, when the non-peak out, COVID out days were there, we were still having 5 times of, typical telemedicine days traffic. Now, what it means, we were doing a very detailed analysis of typical telemedicine patients. So there were many myths which got resolved, and those myths will, probably give some indication that why care away from the hospital will continue. First myth was that it is a, younger generation phenomena. Elderly people will not be doing telemedicine consult. We found that more than 55% of the people were of the age 50 and above. So this is one. We, generally people say that it's a city phenomena. It's a city behavior. We realized that more than 45% of the patients who were coming on the telemedicine platform were from states like Uttar Pradesh, Jharkhand, and Madhya Pradesh. And traditionally, these states are not known for high adoption in terms of a tech part. Third was that we are of the opinion that serious patient only will come to the hospital, and non-serious, like a typical routine chronic disease and stuff like that. We realize that onco, neuro, and cardiac constitute more than 35% of the patient from 30 odd specialty which we have in Medanta. So this is the third one. Fourth one was also very interesting. we thought that only old patients, because they are captive, they have nowhere else to go, will only come for telemedicine. What we realize is that we have more than 45% of the new patient who came for telemedicine consults in that 1 year of peak COVID. So all of these, give strong indicator that telemedicine is definitely going to stay. And telemedicine is not a typical video conferencing platform for most of the hospital. It is fully integrated with your backend systems. In Medanta, it is integrated with 9 systems. It has specialties, diseases, doctors. What it means is that if you don't know the name of the doctor, but if you know the disease or you know the specialty, some doctor name will appear. Or it is integrated with your payment gateways. It is integrated with your appointment systems, which means that it's like Book My Show kind equivalent. You go, you book your slot, you pay in case you want to pay in advance, and you get the link automatically once the appointment is booked. You pay there. Once the schedule happens, before the scheduled time, 10 minutes before the scheduled time, a link comes for video conferencing, and once a video conferencing is over or the consult is over, link will go automatically to the same SMS where you can download the prescription. So what I'm saying is that it is about change management, and our doctors are also saying to the patient that you don't have to come for repeat visit, you don't have to come for showing the reports, you don't have to come for a follow-up visit and stuff like that. So we say, as Bharat rightly said, that it's not about tech, it's about changing the mindset. And people also realize that coming all the way from Delhi to Gurgaon is like 3 hours of typical traffic with parking, overheads and stuff like that. So why don't you sit at home and get the same consult, same experience? So things will change. Telemedicine is going to change faster. And some of the example which Bharat rightly took, that may take longer time, because I can't have an ICU setting. Yet, honestly speaking, my mom was under COVID and she was a seriously ill patient. I had a complete setup of ICU at home where feed was coming to Medanta, but it was a very, very costly phenomena because tech has not reached a stage which is a commercially viable stage. But ultimately it will reach. So, I can rattle more stuff on why care away from the home. I'll give you another example. We all know about teleradiology. We all know about how do you ensure that analyzers can be, given remote controls for lab doctors to see and do the quality check. I'll give you one more example. We realize that, when technicians has to move a patient on a CT or MRI machines, that's a skillful job. And a lot of technicians got exposed to COVID, like any other hospital. So what we did is that we realized that this is serious stuff. We came out with a mechanism by which console of the modality can be remotely managed, which means that technician doesn't have to be unnecessarily get exposed to the patient, because CT was happening too much during the COVID period. And we were able to manage the console of the CT machines and MRI machines remotely by giving them the control and by building simple software with the help of our partner. So doctors, radiologists, lab doctors, when I say doctors, is clinicians and physicians, technician. I'll give you another example. Nurses were severely impacted, again in our hospitals. So what we did is that on the bedside, we put Alexa for each and every patient, and on the nursing counter, I have an Alexa. So what happens is that there is no need to have a nursing call bell. Patient is speaking on the Alexa, and if the nurse, if it is not a clinical demand, which means that patient is in need of a blanket or a glass of water, so automatically based on the certain keywords, flow will go to housekeeping or flow will go to say F&B. So we did this and we realized that why can't we do similar activities in future also, when load on the nurses for non-clinical activities can be reduced. So some of these stuff, and now we were thinking, when we mentioned about how do we ensure that some of these stuff can be done at home. So probably Alexa video is one such example, which is directly connected to, hospital or care provider, in which critical information can reach in a predefined format, and those predefined APIs are already there in the market. We did it with the help of Amazon. So something, eventually it will come. Something will come in probably, 1 year, 2 years down the line, and a lot of stuff will come in more time. And tech economics is the issue, not the tech feasibility is the issue, according to me.
No, I think that was very, very informative indeed. I'll come to Thanga next. See, this care at home, probably we need to divide it into not any care at home, but like if you are an acute care physician, so all acute care, those interventions that you need to do may not be possible at home. So really, I mean, what we are really having now and where we are already there, we have reached tomorrow, but then there are still a few more to go ahead. So can you just think of it, elaborate it that way?
Sure, Supten. So when you say acute care environment, we are talking of three different departments. Normally, we put intensive care units, emergency departments, and operation theaters into this bucket called acute care. So I'm an acute care physician. I operate in all three areas. But my preferred area to operate is the emergency department. I'm very proud that I'm a ER physician throughout my career, starting from my house surgency. Technically, I've never left the ER department, and right now I'm transforming the ER department in the main Apollo hospital. So that is one segment. With Fortis Escorts Heart Institute, we did the digitization of their 9 operation theaters in New Friends Colony. That was an interesting experience. We built Critinext with again Fahi. We took 12 tele-ICU sites live across North India. Raipur was my first site. Raipur, Raigad, Agra, Amritsar, Dehradun, and all the ICUs in the main hospitals. So doing all this, we sort of had a good exposure to what it takes to digitize these departments. Now let's leave the operating room for a while now. Let's not talk about that. Obviously, you don't want to be operating in somebody's home. We may end up there, but let's keep that away for now. Now, talking about the emergency department and the ICU. Of these three departments, the intensive care unit is the most complicated and most complex. The patient stays for a longer time. The number of players in that area are more. The number of drugs are more. The number of variables is more in that environment. So if you solve the equation for the intensive care unit, a subset of that applies in the OT, and a smaller subset applies inside the emergency department. This is how it is. So now when you say care at home, Rajiv's mom was ill, he said. Good to know that she is doing well. We have to very clearly define what is it that we want to do at home, right? Like when people ask me, sir, a paperless kab ho jayega? I say paperless to kabhi nahi hoga, right? The mindset is let's remove all the paper, let's remove all the register. No, you have an opportunity to digitize certain areas of the workflow, and those are the areas that you need to pick out and you digitize them. When you do that, automatically paper disappears from some of the workflow areas. So again, when you come back into the intensive care unit, what is an intensive care unit? It is just like the ward, but the patient is monitored in a much more frequent interval, usually an hourly. In case of pediatrics, they may do a 30-minute interval also. At 30-minute frequency, they may check the patient. And we normally tend to check 5 vitals: temperature, pulse, respiration, what we call as the TPR chart, blood pressure, and SpO2 is checked. We may take a look at a ECG pattern, mostly to look for arrhythmias. We don't look for STT segment, which indicates ischemia normally on a monitor in the ICU. So this is fully automated now. And before joining Apollo, I was running the Health Innovation Foundation in St. John's Medical College, of which my friend Bharat is the ex-CIO. So we actually have incubated multiple companies across the spectrum. There are companies who are specializing in MIoT edge devices, medical information of Internet of Things edge devices. These are wearables, these are watches, these are stickers. It comes in all forms and all types, and that's a beautiful area to be in. This is one of them. Okay, it's called Get Active. A colleague of mine, a GE colleague of mine, did this in Koramangala. about 10 years ago. And I don't have to tell you, he's a millionaire already, right? So the ecosystem is exploding. We are actually spoiled for choice. And I've become so arrogant that somebody came and pitched a 23,000 product to me. I told him I have a FDA certified product which I'm using for 5,000 rupees. If you expect me to pay 23,000 for something which you are still building, I'm sorry, I'm not interested. So we as clinicians, like how we go and pick up a stethoscope, in the stethoscope world, Litman is supposed to be the best, and it is expensive. But a Litman is a Litman. Everything else comes after that. I know I'm setting off a beehive here, but I earned my Litman with a lot of pride, and I used it. But now I realize, like what our teachers used to tell us, that now what is in between the earpieces is more important than what is around your neck. Okay, if you give it a close thought, what that means is the processing is more important than the stethoscope itself, which means you should know what you're looking for. So that way, we are spoiled for choices. We do have MIoT edge devices to capture these vitals. You need software. We generally push it into the cloud and use a HTML5 browser to access it from. We are device agnostic. So you could access the data from a mobile, from a tablet, from a PC, from a system. I could even project it on a LCD panel or in a stadium if you want. So there's no limit to what you can do with that kind of data. And once you have data, this data is very, very rich. So what we call this is in the realm of the big data environment. And we have variety, we have veracity, we have velocity, we have the initial 3 5s, then the 3 V's, then the 5 V's, then the 7 V's, and the 14 V's, and all that. Once we have access to this amount of data, we actually run analytics on it. And instead of starting from, let's get all the data first, then we'll figure out what to do. When we did that, we found that now we don't know what to do with the data now. So we did the reverse. We went to the clinician. We told them, guys, tell us what is your killing problem. Why are your patients dying? Can you figure out? Give us the top 5 reasons why your patients are dying. Universally, across the world, patients die only of 5 main causes in the ICUs. This is actually surprising. It's nothing out of the world. It is sepsis, which kills about 60% of the patients. Heart failure, which is a medical condition. It's not, don't interpret the English part of it, but heart failure is a condition where the heart basically becomes a bag of rice. It loses its elasticity and blood fluid accumulates, and the patient actually has a miserable life after that. Heart failure kills patients. ARDS, acute respiratory distress syndrome, kills patients. Arrhythmias, kills patients. ALOS, average length of stay in the ICU. We know that if it is 2.23 days, the outcomes are optimal generally. Anything less than that, the patient is still unstable. He's going to end up dying. Anything more than that, the longer the patient stays, the more iatrogenic causes creep in. Patients develop Klebsiella. They pick up all kinds of infections in the ICU. Cross contaminations happen. A whole lot of things happen. So we said, okay, this is the 5 things that I'm going after now. Can I predict average length of stay? I use machine learning and deep learning to actually do that. Right? It is contextual. The algorithm was built with the Duke University in a Western population, but it's a self-learning network. So once I deploy it in an environment, every deviation from the set path that it has taken, it will capture and it learns. So the more you use it, it's like a 2-year-old kid. It learns and it becomes better and better and better. And the confusion matrix is very, very good now. Our predictions are above 90%. In the AI world, anything above 60-65% is acceptable. So we are at 90%, and we are partnered with Duke University in doing. We, as in the startup Cohere Med that I was part of before I was in St. John's Medical College. So it's a huge subject, but what I can tell you is we need to say what are the things that I'm going to do outside the hospital. If I want to monitor my patient, provide an intensive care unit environment outside the hospital, in the patient's home, in a old age home, in a community, these are the XYZ things I need to do. As Professor Supten said, yes, I won't be able to perform all the procedures that I can do in my ICU. Monitoring a patient, doing rounds on the patient, helping an remote intensive care physician by providing expertise. Like with Fortis, we had Dr. Ashok Seth's room just next to our tele ICU room, the command center. So we had the chief minister of Chhattisgarh's relative having a problem. In normal course, they would have flown him in a chartered aircraft to Delhi and they would have consulted with Dr. Ashok Seth. So when our system was deployed there from GE Healthcare, all we had to do is inform him, and Ashok sir just walked into the room. He sat on the console, he looked at everything. He said, "इसको इधर आने का जरूरत नहीं है. ये इतना इसका दवा change कर दो, ये कर दो, and he'll be fine." That sort of showed them the power of technology, right? It saved so much time, and that is what is called as the advisory service. So it's a force multiplier effect, right? You take Dr. Devi Shetty, you take Dr. Girinath in Chennai, you take Dr. Ganapati in neurosurgery. I mean, these are people with tremendous amount of experience. If you expect them to walk over to all the patients, all the clinics in the country or in the world, it's not going to happen. But give them a very comfortable place to sit, and you set up the technology, and then let them virtually consult. This is how we can force multiply their expertise. So 80% of the work is done by the remote clinician. The person who is actually managing the patient, he is still in control. He is the boss. And what I'm giving him from Delhi is only gyan. I can tell him, I think this is what you should be doing. But according to the National Medical Commission and the previous Medical Council of India, who controls our practice in India, all over the world, the practice of medicine is very personal. The one who is treating the patient is always responsible for anything good or bad which happens to the patient. I cannot say because somebody told me from Delhi I did this. No court will accept that. I can get information. I can check with as many people as I want. The final decision is mine, and I have to stand by that decision. So we have to very carefully pick out what are the things. Now, briefly, I'll talk about the emergency medicine department. In my 16 years of practice of emergency medicine, I have come to a firm conclusion that 80% of the patients who are in the emergency should not be there. People die on the field. Why? They die of bleeding. They die because somebody moved them when they had a spinal cord injury. They die because their tongue fell back and it caused obstruction. They died of a gag. These are things which can be avoided, which can be prevented. Why is it not happening? Because nobody is talking, nobody is aware of these things, sadly. And that is my way of using every forum to talk to people. If there is an accident, people are just crowding around and having a view of what is going on. There is some amount of intention to help. Earlier, the fear of being called to a court as a witness was there. Now that is gone because of the Good Samaritan Act. But even now, people don't know what to do. There is an inherent fear that of blood, and people are just standing there watching what to do. So I believe everybody should be trained in first aid. Everybody should be certified in basic life support at a minimum, and any clinical person should be certified in advanced cardiac life support. Advanced cardiac life support is when you are taught how to use drugs and some minimum procedures. Usually doctors and nurses are certified in ACLS, right? So when you do those things, turning a patient on his side will prevent the tongue from falling back and closing the airway. Any bleeding, anywhere, just put pressure on the wound. Just put pressure on the wound. Put your kerchief, take your shirt, put your tie, your scarf, anything. Put pressure on the wound. 10 minutes, 20 minutes, just hold it. Even an arterial bleed will stop, right? And you will actually be saving the patient. If you are lucky, you may even save the limb, okay? When it comes to that, should I, risk losing the limb? It's okay. He can still live, right? Life takes priority. So like that, by taking the emergency medicine department out of the hospital, what am I doing? I'm decongesting the department. And when I get a call, 1066 is our Apollo's number, and the chairman has actually declared that 1066 is free across the country. We don't charge a penny for, calling 1066, and the ambulance would arrive at your doorstep. We have crew who are trained, they are ACLS certified, and they are all nurses for your information. They are fully equipped to administer drugs. They do have a bridge with the doctor who is, back in the emergency department. So they do an initial assessment. They communicate with the medical team. The medical team guides them on what to do. And my boys actually administer DC shocks on the field. They administer drugs. I mean, it is magic to see, the performance of emergency medicine in a patient's home. And last week, they saved a patient who arrested 4 times. He had runs of BF and BT. As we were transporting him in the ambulance, he arrested 4 times. In front of me, he arrested 3 times. 4 din baad, the patient walked out of the hospital. Nothing less than a miracle. What we call as the golden hour, that 1 hour, in that 1 hour, everything was done right. So we have to pick and choose what are the things that we want to do outside the hospital environment. Obviously, you can't do everything, but 80% of the things that you do in the hospital can very well be done outside the hospital using technology. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Thanga, for explaining so nicely. And I think this was quite a good view of the possibilities, not just what for future, but what's really happening now. I think Mr. Tushar is there, or yeah. Yeah, I'll come back to you.
Sure.
So you are from the pharmaceutical industry.
Yes.
So what is your take from the industry specific point of view?
So I am here. I'm representing the pharmaceutical and healthcare industry. So from a pharmaceutical perspective, I think there are 2 basic objectives what we all get into. One is making the medicine affordable, and second is making it reachable to the right patient at the right time, at the right price. Right? So these 2 are our basic premise of whatever we do in Origin or Dr. Reddy's. Dr. Reddy's is our parent company, by the way. So these 2 are our basic premise in the brand behavior itself. Right? So while the others have already spoken a lot about how data is getting captured, and maybe a quick reflection there. So like I was mentioning, that COVID has actually fast-tracked the whole digital transformation journeys. What took 20 years, maybe you can see for past 2 years, it has been quite a fast of a journey. It was laggard so far, but thanks to past 20 months, I think situation has been quite in favor of digital. I myself had COVID last week, and I did not need to go to any doctor. Everything happened on just a mobile app. And of course, I had my watch to capture my SpO2 readings and all. And even my father also got COVID. So he also had a watch, and I was monitoring him every time that whether he's good or he's having any problems breathing or whatever issues he had. So all this, having said all this, I think what we are slowly moving towards is getting the data enriched. Now the patients no longer is getting treated only in the clinic. Now patient is getting monitored in his at his home, on the way to hospital, in an ambulance, maybe patient sitting outside waiting for his turn to come. We are monitoring, we are gathering the data from every single possible source. May that be a wearable, or may that be any other options, whatever we keep on entering as part of our e-health record, right? So all this data, what do we do with all this data? So I was reading somewhere in Gartner's publication that around 72% of the companies in the global platform do not know what do they do with this data, what they're generating. So I think the next level, which I think just now Dr. Thanga had covered, is the AI, ML, and DL, right? The NLP practices now. So the natural language processing is, again, there are a lot of possibilities there. Now, AI as a different subject. I mean, we can speak about AI for hours altogether. But again, AI has 4 different levels. The reactive machines, then there is limited memory, then there is theory of mind, and then there is self-awareness. Self-awareness is the terminator level. This is where everything stops, right? So as a human race, we have achieved the first 2. Now, it is time actually to take out this data and do some prescriptive analytics. All right. Now, when I say prescriptive analytics, now imagine you have a robot assistant at your home, and that robot assistant is actually not only monitoring you, but it is also prescribing you that, hey, Tushar, look, your heartbeat has increased from this to this, or my father's heartbeat has increased from this to this. Now, there's a possibility that he might undergo a heart attack in the future. Possibility, right? Or he may monitor at 3 o'clock and wake me up that, hey, look, there is some problem with your father. And immediately, now that small digital nudge will help me to quickly take an action and save a life, right? Which probably would have not been possible 5 years, 10 years back. The whole COVID situation has actually helped us to get the data and also to try to do analytics on top of it and try to save millions of lives. Currently, if you look at, so there are many examples. Now there are multiple platforms as well. Again, I'm coming from the pharmaceutical and healthcare perspective. There are multiple platforms. When I say like one platform is for your insurance, one platform is for ordering medicines online, some platform is there to search doctors, some platform is there to which can help you with the cab. Now there's a possibility of creating an aggregator platform. Right now, an aggregator platform is comprising of all these smaller platforms together. Right? It can bind everything together, and at the end of the day, it can give you a complete suite, an end-to-end suite, right from booking a cab, booking an appointment, to your final medication, and even reminding you that this is the way you should take your medicines. Right. So, as of now, what we are seeing in the industry, again from a healthcare and pharmaceutical perspective, there's a change in the way the management is thinking in most of the companies. Earlier, digital, or earlier we used to call that ourselves as IT. In a pharmaceutical company was just a department where we were supposed to fix computers and servers, right? But given the very nature of whatever changes have happened recently, the name has changed from IQ, that is IT quotient, to digital quotient, DQ. Now, this is where you can actually appreciate that how digital is now supporting the business, supporting the patients, and also creating a new line of business. There are multiple examples I can show on, I can talk about it multiple times. But then again, at the end of the day, if you look at it, you are generating a lot of data. You are defining the right strategies at your company level. And at the end of the day, you're trying to save life by giving him a right medicine at the right cost at the right time. The overall spectrum of whole digital health has actually undergone tremendous change, Dr. Supten. So in fact, for last couple of years, I mean, I was again reading some article, 80% of the CEOs are actually thanking the way COVID has actually changed and has actually improvised the pace of digital transformation. So there is still a lot of ground to be covered. From a challenge perspective, I think we all also need to be very aware of the fact that because of the current data which is getting generated, there's a high possibility of cybersecurity, information security breaches. I'm not talking about a company getting hacked. I'm not talking about a phishing attack. I'm not talking about an organization. I'm talking about your, mine, everyone's data. Now, all this data, we don't have a clear-cut law like Europe has a GDPR law. We don't have anything as of now in India. Of course, government is working on it. But then the data itself has become so critical. People say data is oil. No, data is more than oil. All this data, whatever we are generating, that security of this data is equally important. Many people think that, okay, shall I keep this data on cloud? Maybe pharmaceutical companies don't think that way, because we need to be very sensitive about our data, about the doctor's information, the pharmacy's information, about the patient information for that matter. We don't want to keep it on the cloud and get hacked in a way. So there are multiple technical solutions around it, like cloud security, posture management, multiple other things. Of course, I'll not touch about it as of now because it's very technical in nature. But information security also takes the driving seat. The moment you're talking about a lot of data and a lot of analytics to do on around it. In a nutshell, just to summarize, and Bharat is on the fourth number, so he'll need more time to speak. So in a nutshell, I think first is we need to identify what use cases we will solve and what we will not. Right, like rightly said, oncology or even for that matter, any cardiac related issues may not be solved at your home, may not be solved even on the way. It can only be solved by a specific healthcare professional's help, right? So you need to identify what all use cases will be addressed by the digital health remotely and what all cannot happen at this point of time, right? Secondly, I think the change in mindset is extremely important, which my fellow panelists already spoke about. The change management, the change of mindset is extremely important for people to adhere. Even older aged people also have now realized the capabilities of digital and how they can leverage that. And third is once you have the right mindset and once you have the whole the use cases identified, I think it's all about the direction where you want to achieve, where you want to reach. Define a specific aim that this is where I want to reach in terms of digital healthcare, and then I think you can pave out with small phases. Phase one being whatever you have today, solve for it. Phase two can be something bigger. Phase three can be even something bigger, making it more affordable, making it reachable for more and more patients at their home. Yeah, I think I shall take a pause here.
Well, I think, Tushar, you pointed out to a very interesting thing. Actually, this novel coronavirus has been globally mentioned as the chief transformation officer. So it's a global CTO. And that really, I think everyone understood. And the two sectors which have been mostly affected are health and education. So definitely we have certainly taken up some of the things. Maybe we could take a few more. So over to Bharat for the rest.
Yeah, thank you. I think a lot of dimensions were covered by Tushar and Dr. Thanga, Prabhu and Rajiv. I'm going to first substantiate and back what they said from my experience as well. So Rajiv is absolutely right. Organizations like Medanta and the leaders have shown an exceptionally higher capability to use digital. Now, when they are able to do certain things which others are not able to do, and I'm speaking from the experience of one of the startups that I advise, Bestdoc, which works with over 250 companies and provides telemedicine services to over 70 hospitals. The data there clearly shows that there are outliers. This COVID versus post-COVID versus during COVID, there are some hospitals that managed to keep up a very significant chunk of patients still using teleconsultation, but a bulk of them were not able to do it. So there is something about the quality of the providers, their ability to do these things well, which differentiates them from the rest. And I think Medanta is stand out on that. What Dr. Prabhu spoke about was also very significant, that when we say high acuity care cannot be provided at home, it can be provided that the clinician is that much of an expert and you've taken the trouble to educate the end user. So if you've created capacity, like he was mentioning, capacity of life-saving people who can be trained to do these things. So one of the problems about providing care at home is that you need resources, and resources are not trained. So what Dr. Prabhu spoke about and how Apollo has been doing that wonderfully about creating capacity to be able to deliver such services, I think Apollo is doing a standout job on that as well. And again, what Tushar spoke about, the accessibility and the affordability of medicines, and the fact about cybersecurity that he spoke about. I think these are very significant considerations to make a success out of it. And what I like to share really was when you said that you have to set a goal. You have to set a goal what you want to achieve and then go after it. That's the only way to go about it. If you just give up and say it's not going to happen, then you're not going to do it. Or you set an unrealistic goal, it's definitely not going to happen. So you got to set a goal which you can get after and do something about. Like I was saying in my previous avatar, I was a digital entrepreneur, one of the earliest in the country. And one of the things we always said, and it's been often reported, said even in healthcare, is that we tend to overestimate what can be done in the short term, that is in the next 1 or 2 years, and we underestimate what can be done in a decade. So although if we overestimate now and say 80% of patients can be taken care of at home, it's obviously wrong, right? But if we say in 10 years also that number will not go about 15% and 20%, why should I bother about this trend? You are absolutely wrong. If you are a provider who believes that this is not going to happen in 10 years or 5 years, in the longer term, you've got it absolutely wrong. And that is where I try to work with hospitals to understand that, right now you may not be able to get any significant chunk of the market, or the market may not be big enough, but you should be preparing for the future. And disruptors who will come in, the classic book by Clay Christensen, where he describes the innovators or the disruptors way of disrupting a market, is they come in and take up opportunities that the incumbents don't see as profitable, don't see as valuable, right? So I think it's very important, and that's what I try to work with my clients, is to try and analyze and see which are the opportunities you could go after. And a lot of times, like all of the speakers said, the analysis is both technical, clinical, and economics plays a big role. So one of the questions that often comes up is that, okay, if I provide low acuity care at home, right, is it going to be profitable? The margins in that are very low. So if I provide a nurse to go home for a low acuity care, like taking care of a COPD or a patient who's has a cardiac problem but has been treated for it and needs some aftercare, will that margin be high enough to provide the care at home? Versus something else like a total knee replacement surgery, where the care required at home is going to be successful. It's low acuity, but it's also very profitable. So we should be able to analyze the profitability also when we're looking at a corporate or private healthcare system. We should be able to do this analysis, and we should be able to plan our milestones in the growth of digital transformation. Is going to be a journey. It's not going to happen overnight. So we should plan for the future. And I totally agree with everybody that the future of healthcare is at home. We just need to work towards it. Thank you.
I think that was very well put. So for the concluding round, I would actually go in the reverse order. For the concluding remarks and take-home messages, Bharat, you start.
I think I just said the same thing, but I'm just going to repeat it, that start the journey now. Start moving care to home, whatever small steps you can do. The customer wants it, the patients want it. Start the journey now and set yourself realistic goals and keep progressing towards the future. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's put very succinctly. Over to you, Tushar.
Okay, my voice is really sore, so I hope you are still able to hear me well. Okay, all right. So key takeaway from my side is, I think, 3 steps. One is decide what you will do and what you will not, what is possible right now and what is not possible. Secondly, make sure that change management at the organization level and even at the patients and the healthcare professionals level is also taken care of. And third, make sure that you have a goalpost, right? Divide this into smaller phases and do it. I think I strongly agree with Bharat that again, companies will start investing in it the moment they see value, right? So doctors, even big hospitals like Apollo, Medanta, and all, so they will look at it from a perspective that how they can even make this business profitable equally. Because it's not that any hospital will like to go into losses where it is not going to help them grow. So at the end of the day, I think that balance has to be struck between both economies of scale and what brings value to you, right? So I think this is extremely important. Healthcare beyond clinic, beyond hospital is remotely very much doable. I think if you follow these 2-3 steps, I think we'll reach there soon.
No, I think what you said is very important. Value addition. I think that is slightly missing. And value addition to all the stakeholders. In all the stakeholders, the clinicians, the patients, the proprietors, and so on. I mean, if you leave anyone out, then it may sound that it's not going to work. So I think that's a very, very important point. Over to you, Thanga.
Care is at home. We are already having, the care being delivered at home. COVID has proved it to us. Let us now put ourselves in the shoes of the patient. What is it that, you would like to realistically expect a doctor to do on the phone? You can't ask the doctor to give an injection to the phone, right? It's, pretty obvious. So as a patient, we also need to understand the limitations of technology and suitably fine-tune our expectations in such a way that we can utilize the capabilities of technology that we have today in a fruitful way. I hate sitting in a clinic where, a patient walks in and, starts the conversation by saying, Doc, I've been reading about, this condition, last 6 months and I'm really messed up. So this is a problem that, my generation of doctors face, because I come from a generation where the doctor was, his highness sitting on the throne, and you just go and tell him this is what my problem is, and he will tell you, you do this, and you go and do it. You never question the doctor. From there, I'm sitting here now where, I actually have to take the patient as a partner in his care, and I am responsible for clearing all the doubts that the patient has, genuine, many times not genuine, something that his neighbor told him, something that, Google GD told him. And it becomes a very, very difficult, practice, where if you have 30 patients, imagine if, you are spending 1 hour with every patient. So guys, come on, let us be good patients first. Let us respect the clinician's time. Understand that, like you, there are other patients who are, waiting to be seen. And this has to be a partnership, right? If you don't do it in a pub, if you don't do it in the airline industry, if you don't do it in the bank, what makes you think that you can walk into a hospital and start shouting and yelling at, everybody there? Doesn't work that way. You have a problem, you have come to somebody who can help you. Make yourself clear and have your expectations, in line with what technology can do. That is one. As a patient, we have certain responsibilities. Okay, that includes clinicians. I found that clinicians can be some really, annoying patients, because we know so much that we call it the third year syndrome. Third year is when we actually get exposed to the clinical environment, and you read about MI and go back after lunch and you're wondering, am I really having an MI now? Okay, and the next day it's about epistaxis, which is bleeding from the nose, and you sneeze once and you see a little blood, you think, like you're going to die of blood cancer, right? So, Supten is smiling. I think the doctors will identify the third year syndrome, which never really leaves us after that. So we have a responsibility as a patient. We have a responsibility as a provider, as a doctor, as a nurse, as a physiotherapist, as a pharmacist, whatever our subspecialties are within the healthcare domain. Let us see if we use the technology of that is available to us. How best can we use it in such a way that, like, we don't sit and do calculations now. We use our calculator, we use our mobile phone to quickly sort out the mathematics part. Similarly, we don't bother to look up a telephone directory. We can pull up all the numbers we want from our memory, from the mobile phone's memory. So that, let's use the technology. As a patient, yes, we have a responsibility. As a provider, as a doctor, as a nurse, as these people we have, and as the entity that is providing care. So if you take, it could be a health and wellness center. The health and wellness center also has to think on those lines. If I am seeing 100 patients in my clinic every day, if my doctor is seeing 100 patients, can some of these patients be seen at home itself? Normally, follow-up appointments can be handled beautifully by remote consultations. There's no point in asking somebody who underwent a cardiac surgery to come back after 2 days just to see if the wound is fine. There is no need. Dr. Devi Shetty talks about this. They actually train the patient's attender when the patient is being prepared for surgery, so that the patient's attender becomes better than a cardiac nurse. This is a fact. I know. I work with Narayan Vidyalaya, I work with Dr. Devi Shetty. So these are the models that we have to start building into our practice and make care at home real. Let's not talk about it as a very alien concept. It's not. It is very much available. Patients discharged from Manipal Hospital go home with care provided by 2 or 3 companies. The patient has a choice of whom they want to go with. So the lesser the patient stays in the hospital, the better the outcomes. That is proved. There's no questioning that. So let us work on these, areas and make care at home working possibility for our patients. I won't use the word patients. We call them citizens. Ayushman Bharat calls every, citizen of India or every resident of India as a beneficiary of the health assurance. It's not insurance, it's health assurance. So we are working on keeping our population healthy, and we are working on 5 chronic diseases: diabetes, hypertension, 3 types of cancer, cancer of the gastrointestinal tract, breast, and cervix. These are what our health and wellness centers are going to cover. So it's all about predict and prevent, diagnose and treat, Gaya. Let's let it go with, the last millennium. With 2000, let's assume that it's gone. So now let's start working on predict and prevent.
I think that's very well put. So in fact, home care, one of the things which happens is the cost is often reduced, and more importantly, the quality is often increased. So that's a great advantage. And over to Mr. Rajiv for his concluding remarks and take-home messages.
Sure. So, before I say concluding remarks, those will be 3 bullets. I want to give you an example. When Government of India came out with, quarantine at home or quarantine at, institutional facilities like hotels, we came out with a protocol within 48 hours, up and running, purely digital, right from patient enrollment to, nurse interventions, to doctor consults, to medicine delivery, and in case of emergency, bringing the patient back to the hospital. And, no way on this earth we could have done it unless there is a digital. So, this story is important to share. So, according to me,
triage, you mean triage.
Yeah. So, in this particular case, for me, the lessons are 3 from this discussion. I think care away from the home is going to, stay. It will definitely move from, some X percentage to 80%, 90% in years to come. So for this to happen, according to me, the second takeaway is that mobility first has to be, part of the thinking process, part of the design thinking process. Third is that, done is better than perfect. You can't perfect each and everything in such a short time. We came out with within 48 hours straight, including one Sunday. We came out with a digital platform by which we treated tens and thousands of patients away from the hospital. So mobility, care away from the home, done is better than perfect.
No, I think it's very well put. And I think I must thank all the panelists very much for really enlightening us and giving a positive outlook. That's really nice. It was a great learning experience for me, and I hope the audience also would have enjoyed and learned a lot. So thanks to all of you again, and goodbye, everyone.